fans know a little bit about you. How did you obviously start playing football? When did you start playing football, and go and then moving on to college, and then getting drafted in the NFL and your NFL career? How did that all start?
Well, I honestly didn't start playing football until I was a sophomore in high school. But I was always, I always loved football. That was the first love that I had in sports. My parents didn't want me playing it because they thought it was too violent. So I played basketball up until my sophomore year when I kind of just snuck on and tried out for the football team. And, I was a defensive end, actually, through high school, got a scholarship to Purdue, got moved to offensive line my second year at Purdue. And from there, was a starter. Ended up getting drafted 5th round to Jacksonville. Pick 149, and was able to become a starter in my second season there. All the way through my 7 years in Jacksonville. So it was a great experience, man. I mean, it's a dream come true. It's what you always, it's what everybody dreams about when they're a kid, and living that life and being in that world. It was obviously a blessing. So, a lot of great memories, a lot of not so great memories, but thus is that's the way that sports is. You get a little bit of everything. So, it makes you, especially playing 7 years in Jacksonville, that made me a Jaguar. So now it's I played in Dallas too, but I don't care for Dallas. I didn't care for the Cowboys.
Seems like nobody does.
Yeah, organizations, there's many reasons why that organization has been stuck in the mode it's been stuck in, and a lot of it has to do with the guy at the top. So, but obviously you got a little bit different perspective being a player on some of the things that are happening now in the NFL, because really a lot has changed, but a lot has stayed the same. There hasn't been – the one thing that I have noticed is I've noticed a fall off in technique. Technique in the NFL is not what it was 5 years ago, much less, when I was playing 7 years ago, 8 years ago. And, I mean, our coaches were such sticklers for technique. It was not even funny. Like, and you could see it on film, from any team you looked at. Whatever week of the season it was, you saw the film was what, kind of set the tempo for how you prepared for opponents. So you can see the technique that they're using. You can see that their consistency is there. But, being an outside, looking from the outside looking in now, hey, we have access to the all 22 footage. So you still get to look at the film like a player looks at it. And you don't see the technique. You don't see the crisp execution. You don't see the speed is still there, but it's almost out of control speed to a certain extent. And I think that's hurting most on Thursdays, because that's the extra game that gets slid in there. So you're seeing the worst of technique on Thursdays because of that short turnaround. And a lot of guys go into that game and their bodies are still reeling from the previous game.
Right.
So you got to kind of numb yourself. They hit you with the Toradol to numb you up so you don't feel it. And then they got to give you like a week off after that because you can't move. So just that's kind of been the evolution that I've seen just personally of the sport and how it's kind of changed, but also hasn't changed. So
yeah. The announcers were joking earlier on the Thursday Night Football broadcast, like, when are we finally going to get a touchdown? And it finally happened in the third quarter. It took a 6-quarter drought for that to happen. So you're indicative.
I mean, you see these teams can't even score. Like, they can't even get in the red zone. It's so bad. And I think the coaches have made this sport way too complicated.
Oh, absolutely.
In their own minds, because it's not a complicated game. It's football.
Yep.
And they make it rocket science.
Well, don't tell that to the Patriots, because they have two guys that could be scientists and rocket science people.
And then you have Miami's coach that you called the nerd 2 weeks ago.
McDaniel,
too.
That guy is like 5'4", 5'3". He looks like He looks like a nerd. He looks like a white Pee-wee, a white what is it? Jaleel White. What was it? Urkel. He looks like
Urkel.
He looks like an Urkel. That's what he looks like. Dude, they had to pull up a stool for him to stand on when he's talking to the press. I mean, seriously.
Wow.
So my question, Uche, is you played with two of the best running backs of their time for a while. Fred Taylor, you kind of started with when he was a little older, but still was very good at that time. And then Maurice Jones-Drew, when he came in as a young running back, instantly dominated. So what were they like both on and off the field as players and as teammates?
Man, just, Mojo's a stand-up dude, one of my best friends. Still talk to Mojo to this day. Fred was a leader. He was, I was in awe when I got on when I was on got to Jacksonville and walk in the locker room. And honestly, the only two names I knew in the Jaguars before being drafted by them was Leftwich and Taylor. Fred Taylor, Byron Leftwich. And seeing these guys, especially seeing Fred Taylor, knowing how long he'd been playing, how much of a legend he was to to the NFL world, I thought it was amazing. I thought it was like, this is the NFL. Wow. Like, but Fred was a stand-up dude, man. Fred was a leader. He was a professional, and, and he was very transparent about, the pitfalls that young players fall into, both from a professional standpoint, financial standpoint, all those different things. He was a teacher to a lot of us because of, his knowledge and his experience. So it was really, it was enriching. It was very enriching, for me as a player, as a young player, to have somebody like that in the locker room. And he was damn good still. I'll never forget, like, my first, let me see here. My first game, our first home game, I'll never – was it a home game? I think this was later in the season, actually. We're playing against the Raiders. And I actually wasn't even dressing for this game. I was just like in street clothes or in sweats. So I'm walking in a little bit late, right after the kickoff. And first play of the game, this guy just gets a dive and just goes like 70 yards from like the 20, 25, 70 yards to like the 10-yard line. And, this is a guy they said was old. This is a guy they said was, was over his prime. And he's outrunning like 22-year-olds up the middle of the field. I mean, his speed was amazing. His speed was so underrated. I mean, the dude was even at, I think this was at 33. He was still just blazing down the field. And, it was good to see that kind of talent. I mean, Maurice learned a lot from him as a running back. And, for Jacksonville to have kind of two running backs kind of transition from one to the other with those kind of running backs, that high quality. I mean, Maurice Jones-Drew, 3 Pro Bowls in a row as a starter. The rushing title in 2011. It was always just kind of like, we felt like that's just what Jacksonville was. We're a running team. We run the ball well. We always have good running backs. And our passing game thrives because our running game is so good. And, both of those guys were really, really strong ambassadors for the Jaguars. And even to this day, Maurice is still one of the quintessential Jaguars when you look at it. So definitely was good having both of them.
I wonder if our friend Stuart Schweigert remembers that run.
As everybody knows, we are talking to former Jaguars.
Stu was there, yeah.
Stu was there. That's right. We are talking to former Jaguars guard Uche Nwaneri. Uche, when you look at the NFL and you look at the guard position, you look at the offensive line, it's all about camaraderie. It's all about family. Every single offensive lineman I've ever interviewed and I've spoken to, they tell me every single offensive lineman have to work as one. If you don't work as one, the offensive line never works. And you played 104 games with the Jaguars as an NFL player. You were very consistent. You barely were hurt. If you look at your career, after your 2007 season as a rookie, 2008, 2009, 2010, 2011, 12, and 13, you missed one game, which is it's remarkable when you talk about injuries and consistency. What is it like? What is it like playing on an offensive line working together as one, and really keeping yourself as healthy as you did as an offensive lineman?
I mean, look, man, I was playing hurt. I wasn't playing injured, but I was playing hurt. Everybody's playing hurt. So, you're never quite 100%. You're usually hovering somewhere between 85 to 100% on a weekly basis, just, as a default. But, I can't tell you, man. I mean, injuries are part of the game, but I was fortunate to not have many injuries as a player. And that's obviously not something that a lot of guys can say, but it's something that you hope you're able to achieve through the course of your career. And as an offensive lineman, I mean, you're in the trenches. So it's like, man, how many times have my knees been rolled up on? Well, that's probably like 100 times. But, it's, fortunate that you don't have that, because once you get a serious injury, once you get like a torn something, once you tear something, break something, your whole body has to readjust to it in the recovery, and you become more susceptible to those injuries in the future. So it's kind of like leads you down a injury riddled path after that point. But for offensive linemen, we have to grind these things out a lot of the time. So guys don't really care that we're hurt, so we have to kind of push through it a little bit more than everybody else does. But the unit itself is unique because we are the engine of the car. Mm-hmm. The car doesn't move without the engine being turned on. And we have a number of responsibilities that are crucial to any play being able to work, being able to execute in certain game scenarios, whether it's in the red zone, whether it's coming out from a backed up position, whether it's a sudden change where we got the ball on the opponent's side of the field and we have to be able to set the tempo as a line. A lot of times it really comes down to us being able to move the defense back, a couple yards off the ball, being able to hold up in pass protection. And there's so much that goes into those things working. Communication is being, one of the top things you have to be on top of as a player. You have to know what to say to your guy. Your guy has to know what to expect from you. And you have to, and the repetition of getting that communication synchronized, comes in practice, comes in training camp, because on game day, I mean, hell, half the times you can't hear. Half the times you can't hear what your guy next to you is saying, but you can tell what he's saying because of how many times you've done it in practice. You know what to expect. But being able to be a cohesive unit, you can tell there's a distinct difference between what an offense looks like when the offensive line is playing well and when it doesn't. I mean, you can see that on a number of teams today in the NFL. You look at, a team like the Kansas City Chiefs. Kansas City Chiefs might have the best offensive line in the NFL simply because those guys communicate extremely well with the line of scrimmage. And I know that they have probably the best offensive line coach in the NFL. He was my offensive line coach for 6 out of my 7 years, and Andy Heck. I see everything he taught us being done by the Chiefs offensive line when I watch their games. And it's, I kind of know what they're doing because I know how that coach thinks. And, one of the things that he was such a stickler for, Andy Heck, is technique and consistent technique, because you have to be able to do it over and over and over. This dude's a very smart guy. He teaches his guys every element of blocking as an offensive lineman, and that really does come into play during the game. It has to be such a well-oiled machine for offensive linemen for you to truly for you to be able to truly see how much of an influence the offensive line play has on everything else. I mean, it's the unit that gets the least amount of credit when it's working, and the most amount of blame when it's not. There's this distinct difference between how a good offense looks with a good O-line and one that doesn't have one.
You mentioned the Chiefs. I'm sure as a day 3 draft pick yourself.
I was day 2.
Oh, you were day 2?
I don't know about this day 3 stuff that y'all have now. Now it's like they got 5 days or something like that.
But yeah, late round pick. And Trey Smith was a 7th round pick and coached by the same guy as you.